All right, so we are now on the final iyunim for the final chapter of the Sefer. So we talked about this principle where the Rebbe shows us that Mashiach can be found in every single Sedra, and even more in the Haftarah, and of course even more in the Hasidic Parsha, as Rifki, as you just mentioned. So this is the final iyun for this particular chapter. We were talking about how we found Mashiach in Chlal in Torah Shebachsav. And so now we're just going to look a little bit more about, in general, this the makar of the way the parshas are. So a little bit of Iviakolius here of how we get the division of the parshas, the sedras, and the actual names of the sedra. So we saw a little bit about it in terms of the principle that the sedra, the name that we have for the sedra, actually tells us the entire thing. And we saw an example for example, the Zayis Tara Hamitzayra that used to be called the Zayis Tara. Now we call Parshas Sedra itself with Sara. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And this iyun is not going to take us the full share time. What we're going to do is once we have this, I will then, I think I'm going to stop the recording and restart it. And we're going to go back to a previous chapter that we had skipped much earlier on. We'll come back to chapter 8 and kind of start filling in the missing gaps in the middle of the sefer that we jumped ahead of. So, I see, Rifki, you're here. Would you like to read? You'd like to start us off? Yes. Okay, you have to unmute yourself, though. Otherwise, we can't hear you. Oh, you're very soft.
Hello?
Oh, okay, wait, so maybe it's my sound here. Okay, go ahead.
Again? Moshe Rabbeinu tikein lahem l'Yisrael shiyu koydem b'Torah b'chol Shabbos mibli lagdir ma v'kama l'kroi b'chol Shabbos. Moshe set up the takana that Bnei Israel should read in the Torah every Shabbos, but he did not say exactly what and how much to read every Shabbos. There is achar kach Ezra tikein lahem shiyu koydem klolei shebeseifer vayikra parsh b'chukaisai koydem atzeres sheb'mishnah Torah parsha savai koydem Rosh Hashanah. In later generations, in the time Ezra affixed that they should read parshas b'chukaisai before Shavuos and parshas kisavai before Rosh Hashanah. בזמן הש"ס היה מנהג ארץ ישראל לסיים את התורה כולה בשלוש שנים, ומנהג בבל היה לחלק את התורה לנ"ג חלקים, הם נ"ג הפרשה שבידינו, כך שסיים את התורה כולה בשנה אחת. In the time of the Gemara, the minhag in Eretz Yisrael was to finish the Torah in 3 years, but in Bavel they divided the Torah into 53 sections, and those are the 53 parshas that we have today, and so they finished the whole Torah in 1 year. And it seems that the minhag, the way they did it in Bavel, was more proper because it went according to what Ezra had decided.
I wouldn't say more proper, but rather more, it fit in more. Yeah, fit in more with what Ezra had.
Right. Ezra said that every year they should read the Klolos. We should read the Klolos before Shavuos and before Rosh Hashanah.
That's right. But and that makes sense too, because Ezra was coming back from Golus Bava, right? That was the end of Golus Bava when he came back to build the second base of Mikdash. So it makes sense that that was what would have been, that would have fit in with that custom.
Rabbi Sadoira is minhag Bavel is pashik b'chol tfutz Yisrael ad shagam be'eretz Yisrael atzma noigim kiyayim ki minhag Bavel. So in the generations, the coming generations, the minhag of Bavel will spread throughout all of Bnei Israel, and in Eretz Yisrael also they go according to the minhag of Bavel. So now we call, it is our minhag to call each parsha of the 53 parshas in a name that's taken from the beginning of it. כבר בש"ס מוזכרים כמה משמות הפרשיות, אמנם שמדובר בשמות שהיא ממש מתחילת הפרשה, כמו בעת תצווה וכי סיסה. So in the Shas, it's already mentioned some of the names of the parshas, and those names are the actually from the beginning of the parsha. For example, Ba'at Tetzava and Kisisa. V'chein ein barer im kavanas Chazal lekroy the parsha b'shem hamayr al teichen, al derech shem ha'adam hamayr al zehusay miyuchedes, oy rak letzayin es hadibur hamaskel shelo kisimen zihoy ba'oma al derech mispar siduri. Say that. So, and therefore, it is not clear to us what the Chazal meant when they to call the name of the parsha according to its teichen, like a person is called, the name of a person shows on his who he is, or just to note the first words so we know where the parsha starts from. For an example of numbers, ordered numbers. Vikor inyan shel shemes haparshos anu moitziim etzar b'seder harishonim b'siddur harasag b'seder tefillah shel Rambam u'mukames mefuzarim b'Perush Rashi. The idea of the names of the parshas we find in earlier generations in the siddur of Reb Tzaddik Gaon and of the Rambam, and in different places in the Parsha of Rashi. Sham ochen yeshna gam shemas ke'elu she'enam dibra maskal mamash ela nira shechipsu es oisei teves sheish lahem kesher im teichen haparsha k'moi parshas Lech Lecha afsha dibra maskal shelahu vayomer Hashem alavra v'chein parshas v'kuli truma afsha dibra maskal shelahu daber el bnei Yisrael. So, and there are names of the parshas that are not the first words of the parsha.
Right. So in other words,
like they did look for words that have a kesher to the inyan of the parsha.
That's right. So when we see who's discussing the concept, like what's within the parsha, we see those things mentioned in Reb Tzaddik Gaon Siddur, in the order of Tfilos of the Rambam, in different places in Rashi. And when those people, when they are referring to the parshas, we see that the names that they're referring to it are not literally the first words, but that they obviously were looking for something that represented the content of those parshas.
And for example, Lech Lecha and Truma. Even though you could say here that obviously they didn't want to use Vayomer Shem because Vayomer Shem is very often, or Daber el Bnei Yisrael could also be very often.
But again, so the Lech Lecha tells us more specifically about which center we're talking about, right?
Omnam etzar b'seiner rishonim roiv haparsha is nikros b'shem ben beza gimel teves. So in these earlier sources that we mentioned, most of the parshas are called with 2 or 3 words. Al pi minhag Yisrael shebiyadeinu sheish l'shar shemakayre b'daris mucharim yoser shemes elu iskatzru oy huklafu l'shem ben teva achas bovad. K'moi parshas Eila told us Noach hanikros etzleinu Noach or parshas V'chuli Truma hanikros etzleinu Truma. So, but the minhag that we have nowadays, so we assume this is from even later generations, that these names were shortened or changed to one-word names. For example, if it used to be called Eila told us Noach, now we call it Noach. V'chuli Truma, now we call Truma. L'cha'ira, yenachem leimar al derech hanal, שכשקודם לפרשה בכמה טבעס, גם כשאינם מתחילת הפרשה ממש, מכל מקום עדיין זה על דרך דיבור המשכיל. So you could say that when you call the parsha a few words, even if it's not from exactly from the beginning of the parsha, but still it's like a dibur hamaskil. It's anyway the beginning of the way it starts. וכאשר השם הוא בן טבע אחס בלבד, או מודגש יסר, שזה Az mukdash yesher shezeu shem mamish. But when the parsha has just one word, so then it's more not stressed, it's more
emphasize.
emphasized. That it is an actual name. ובפרט כשאנו אכן רואים שמגימל הטבע שבדברי הראשונים, מן הגישה להשתמש בעשי טבע קשור יסר עם תוכן הפרשה, כפי השם המורה על התוכן, כמו בדוגמה של נוח ותרומה כנ"ל. And specifically, we see that from the three words that it was called in the beginning, the Minhag Yisrael is to use the word that is more connected to the inyan of the parsha, as we see in these two examples above of Noach and Truma. L'mreisa Amar Le'el she'shemes haparsha moedem al techen haparsha b'mabat pashut nireh she'ein ze tamid kach. Even though we said above that the name of the parsha shows the techen of the parsha, but if we look at it at first glance, it doesn't seem to be like that always. Sharei chalukas haTorah l'nun gimel parshas hi chaluka shridoisis netem l'tzairech. Because the division of the Torah to 53 parshas, it was a division that was done according to the need. Koloimar shahayil u'b'shana muveres yeshnam be'erach k'mispar zel shel shabbosais cholkos haTorah l'mispar chalokim matim. Because in a year and in a leap year, the amount of Shabbosais that are in the year is this amount, and that's why the Torah was divided to 53. So the Torah itself is not divided. It's the inyan, the themes in the Torah are not divided into 53 specifically parts, and not like the division of Chamisha Chumshei Torah, which was divided right from the beginning. So this division is very technical.
That's right, and that's why if you look inside the Sefer Torah, the division between Chumashim is very clear in the Sefer Torah. It's a few lines in between one Chumash and another. The division between Sedris is not so clear, because the division between Sedris is exactly like the division between any Parsha. In other words, anytime you have a pei in the Torah, pei or a samach, right, which is a division where you have a blank space or a blank, either in the middle of a line or from the words until the end of a line, that's the division of a Parsha, but you could have a Sedra with many Parshas inside it. So there are many, many Parshas in the Torah. There are 53 Sedras, in other words, what we read on a Shabbos. So it does seem still to be a little bit, it's like a technical thing. We had to divide it up into 52. So yes, of course, using the Parshas, but again, dividing it up and deciding what would be read, how many Parshas would be read within that Sedra of that week, seems to be more of a technical thing. However, right, at first glance, that's what we say, okay?
ואומנם נראה שנעשתה השתדלות שכל פרשה תהווה במידה מסוימת יחידה בפני עצמה. But we see that it seems that there was a effort that each parsha should be an individual, meaning should have its own theme. It's כמו פרשת בראשית שמספרת על בריאת העולם ועשר הדרך שמאדם עד נוח, ופרשת נוח שמספרת על המבול ועשר הדרך שמנוח עד אברהם. Like we see, Parsha Bereshit talks about the creation of the world and the 10 generations from Adam to Noach. And Parsha Noach talks about the Mabul and then the 10 generations from Noach to Avram. So that sounds like a logical division according to themes. Ach pal min rabbis Parsha Achas koilelas inyanim sheinim shloi behechrech mahavim yechida achas va'ad shepal min nireh sheklalim b'neim kesher miyuchad. But there are many times that a parsha has all different types of ideas, and not necessarily are they one unit. And even it seems that at first glance, it seems that there is no kesher, there is no connection between them, special connection between them. וכן לידך גיסא, פעם רבייס עניין אחד נחלק לשתי פרשיות, ודוגמה פרשה שמיני. חצר מדבר על חנוכת המשכן, ביום השמיני למילואים, ומהווה המשך לסיפור שבעת ימי המילואים בפרשת צו, וחצר השני מדבר על בעלי חיים הטמאים והטהורים, שאין לזה קשר גילוי לחנוכת המשכן. מן היצר קשר לדיני טומאה וטהרה שבפרשת תזריע מצורע. And on the other hand, we see many times that one Inyan is divided into two parshas. And for example, Parsha Shmini, that the first half is talking about the Chanukah Mishkan on the 8th day of Miluyim, and it's a continuation of what was told of the Shiva Simei Miluyim that was told about in Parsha Tzav. And the second part of the parsha talks about Tamei and Tahar, any kosher and non-kosher animals, that this does not have a open connection to Chanukah Mishkan. And it seems to be more connected to the laws of Tum and Tara that we find in Tazri Mitzayra. The Lord Gam came in Parshas Vayechi, and we see, we can also see that from Parshas Vayechi, Shem Tefillah, B'makom Shabbatayra in Kol Hefsek Parsha. And in the Torah itself, it's not the beginning of a parsha.
Yeah.
There's no pay there. Well, derech ze muvam menagei l'shem parshas. So the same thing we see with the names of the parshas. Avshek kanal shem bechlal omer laharos al hataychen dugmas shmois shemes hamasechtes b'shas v'chulei. Ach benagei l'nug gimel parshas shebetayra hayil v'reva parshas ein taychen echad b'meila ein efshar l'tek lahem shem shemar al taychen el hutzuchu l'tek lahem shem heskemi shalav dafka mar al taychen el zilui ba'oma. So even though we said that the name is supposed to show on the taychen of something, for example, the names of the Masechtas and the Shas, but in regards to the 53 parshas of the Torah, since most of the parshas don't have one idea, so it's impossible to give a name that shows the taychen of that parsha, and there had to be given a name that was just decided upon, that not necessarily it's according to the taychen of the parsha, but it's just identification for this parsha. And therefore, the minhag was to call the parsha in a name that's taken from the first pasuk of the parsha. Well, there are parshas gracious. Shashem Yachol Ha'eretz Al Kol Parsha She Rishayin Shabbatayim and Seperes Al Reisha Sabiyah. V'chein parshas Noach Shereva Parsha Ochei Noisek B'Ma'oreisav Shel Noach. But it does seem that there was a there was an effort that the name should show the taychen of the parsha, the whole parsha, or most of the parsha. As we see in Parshas Bereishis, that the name shows us on the general parsha that it's the first in the Torah, and it talks about the beginning of creation. And also Parshas Noach, that most of the parsha does talk about that which happened to Noach. My parsha Shmini shrak chatzeh mesaper al yom hashmini l'miluim. But many times we see that the name makes sense only to a part or a little bit of the parsha, like in Parsha Shmini, where only a half talks about Yom Hashmini l'miluim. Upavim rabbis nireh she'ein lo shum kesher l'taychen parsha, ela rak k'moi siman ba'olma l'zio parsha, k'moi parsha tetzava she'ein b'tevis tetzava shum hayra al taychen parsha. Without the Rebbe Sichos, right? And it seems very often it seems that there is no kesher to the taychen of the parsha, and it was only chosen as a sign so that we can identify which parsha it is, like in Parsha Tetzava, that the word Tetzava does not show anything specific about what the parsha is talking about. but שלפעמים אדרבה, שם הפרשה נראה הפוך מתוכן הפרשה, כמו פרשת חיי שרה, שתוכנה מספר על ותום שרה ועל מאורע שבהמשך הזה. And there are times when the opposite, that the parsha shows the opposite of the teichen of the parsha, like in Parshas Chayei Sara, that the parsha talks about starts with that Sarah died and everything that happened after that.
So like you said, this is how we would see it if we didn't have the Rebbe and the Sichos, right? That it just seems, okay, so it seems technical, it seems just a way, like we have parts like with numbers, just a way to identify. We use 3 words and then they cut it down to 1 word or 2 words, and that they tried to make it the essence, but they didn't always kind of get it right. That's what it would seem, right? Sometimes it shows everything that's in the Parsha, and sometimes, it's only one thing or another. Okay, that's how you would think. If you didn't have the Rebbe who showed us something completely different. And that's our next little section. It's however.
Should I continue or someone else?
You tell us when you want to break.
Okay. This time I have water with me.
Okay.
Afkenal, kol zehu b'staklos pshuta, haimere shechluk zaparsha shmasem he maisi de adam. V'meile lefi hagbolos. Adam, לפי הגבלת האדם, אמנם בסטקלוס טיירונס, פנימיוס העניין הוא אחרס לגמרי. So, but this is all only if we look at the division of the parshas and its names as something that was man-made, and therefore it is according to the limitations of man.
Right, that's what we said, the idea of, okay, we try to find the main thing, and sometimes we get it, and sometimes we can't, so we call it Shmini, doesn't get everything, okay, right? But that's, if it was only based on our own cycle, then of course, then there's going to be a limitation to what we get. But
if we look at Kivim Satira, then it's a completely different story. כפי שהרבא מבאר בנוגע לשם הפרשה, שאף שהם מהדור של אחר הש"ס כנ"ל, אומנם כיוון שמקודם הוא מגדולי ישראל, או במקרים שהשמות קוצרו והשתנו משך הדורות כנ"ל, ממנהג ישראל שתיראו, לפיכך הריהם שמות תירניים עם כל המשמעות שבדבר. As the Rebbe explains, the names of the parshas, even though they are from generations after the Shas, but since their source is from Gedolei Yisrael, or in the instances where the names were shortened over the generations, so then it's maybe not from Gedolei Yisrael, but it's anyway a minhag Yisrael, which is Torah, and therefore these names are Torah names with all the meanings in that. ומזה מובן בקל וחומר בנוגע לעצם חלוקת הפרשas שאף היא חלוקת תירונס. And therefore we can understand, like a kal v'chomer, that if the names are from Torah, so we could say that the division of the parshas is also a division, Torah division.
Right, because at the end of the day, everything's hashgacha pratis. And another fact that this is the view of the Rebbe, even in terms of prakim. Because the Parshas, at least, the division, like we said, the Sedra is a collection of Parshas. The Parsha division is for sure in the Sefer Torah itself. The Sedra division, we said, came from Gedolei Yisrael. But even the Prakim, which we know came from the Goyim to begin with, when they first translated the Chumash in Targum Shivim, and the Rebbe still pointed out, though, that at the end of the day, everything's hashgacha pratis. So the Rebbe also says, so even when I train teachers, I say, first of all, you should be looking at the Sedra, you should be looking at the Parshas, the Pez and the Samach. You shouldn't just be going by the Prakim, because that really is not the original division. However, there are times, of course, that the Parshas and the Prakim do coincide, and there are times where the Rebbe even points out that the Prakim, that there's something to learn from the fact that something is in a particular perek. And I remember there was a Sikha there, and in the footnote of the Sikha, the Rebbe makes this point that even though it came from the Goyim, if it's bashkacha pratis as well, right? The Eibishter is still involved, and the fact that the division of prakim end up in our chumashim today, that Gedolei Yisrael use, that are using for generations, shows that there is something we can still learn even from the prakim. So for sure, if that's the case in terms of prakim, then how much more so it's a kal v'chaimer for sure in terms of the division that was made by Yidden themselves.
So when you're telling, let's say you give kids an assignment to look up things in the Chumash, so you use which Chumash, which Parsha, and then which Perek? Is it important to know
generally
the
you
name
should.
of the Parsha?
Well, generally they should, for sure, because one of the things is you know which chumash it is, and we teach students the names of the sedras, right? To know the sedra, I wanted to delineate between sedra and parsha, and I need to know the names of the sedras of the parsha, right? In every single chumash. So ideally, you say, okay, I want you to look in Parshas Lech Lecha, and we do use parak because, again, numerically, that's where you find it. When students are older and we want them to look at the entire sedra, we'll say, look through the sedra, tell me how many parshas are in this sedra. I want you to read from here until the end of this parsha, which means the end of this section, and tell me what is this section about, right? Because that's the actual section. If teachers will be more mindful of that, even in terms of, you make a siyum when you finish the parsha, right? The pay within the sedra, right? If the sedra is too long, then do it at the end of the parsha rather than the end of the perek, right? Because that is more in line with how the Torah divided it up. Even though, like you say, the chapter, the numerical one is a technical thing. That is how we're going to be able to find what we need to find. It's still perek and pasuk. Yeah. Okay.
כיוון שכל מה שתלמוד ווסק עושה לחדש, הכל נאמר למשה מסיני, וכפי שהרב מפרש שהכל נכלל בכוח ובהלם בהר סיני. אלא שיציאה מההלם בכוח אל הגילוי בפועל היא על ידי התלמוד ווסק ברבייס הדייס. And because everything that in the future will be learned, will be how do you say, a chiddush will be, well, everything new that we will learn in the future was already all said to Moshe on Har Sinai. And as the Rebbe explains, that everything was included in the potential in Koyach and in a hidden way in Har Sinai. But for it to come from hidden to in Koyach to revealed in actuality, this happens through people who learn Torah in the future generations. הרי שגם חלוקת הפרשיות לשמייסיהם היא מסיני ממש, אלא שסקלוסה בפועל היא על ידי בני ישראל ברבס הדרס. Therefore we understand that this division of Parsha is according to their names. It's actually from Har Sinai, but it was revealed in actuality only through Bnei Yisrael in later generations. כיוון שכל העניינים שבתורה הם תחת דיוק, מובן שחלוקת התורה לנון גימל פרשס אינה חלוקה שירוסיס, אלא חלוקה אמיתיס בתכלס, שהתורה עצמה מתחלקת בתוכנה לנון גימל חלקים. וכל העניינים הנכללים בפרשה אחת יש להם נקודה אחת משותפת הנבדלת מהפרשה של לפניה ושל אחריה. And because everything in Torah is exact, so we understand that the division of Torah to 53 parshas is not just technical or haphazard, but it's a real division. The Torah itself is divided in its teicha into 53 parts, and everything that is written about in one parsha, so they do have one point that is one point
that connects all of them, and that it separates
and it
one
divides it
parsha
from the parsha that was before it or the after. Well, there's a moving
That's what we actually saw
right.
earlier on in this chapter. We talked about Parsha Shmini B'chlal. How Shmini, that was it, the fact that they brought that as an example here that on the surface looks like it's completely not connected. We showed how Shmini was very much connected, and Dafka why the Shivas Yemei Miluyim, the first 7 days had to be in Parsha Tzav, and that Shmini had to start with the Shmini Miluyim and the connection between Tumantara and the animals and how that is connected to Shmini, because Shmini is the hint of lost love, right? Shmini is Mashiach. So everything is very exact.
there's a moving gam kain shemas aparshes einam rak shemas heskemiyim ba'oma. וגם לא רק שמס המוירים על תוכן חלק מהפרשה, אלא אפילו רובע, אלא שמס המיתים המוירים על עשר נקודה משותפת הנמצאת בכל חלקי הפרשה כולה. So accordingly, we understand that also the names of the parshas are not just names that were decided on just like that, but these are the names, but these names do show on the, and they are only names that show on part or
And they're
even the
not
whole
named.
Taichen.
They weren't just
They weren't.
decided by like majority, that all people just got together and made a decision, they all kind of agreed. So it wasn't that, and it's also not a name that was chosen because it shows a part of the parsha, or maybe a majority of it. Rather,
these are real names that show this, how do you say, this one point that all the parts of this parsha, how they're all connected to. And this one point that connects all the parts of the parsha, the name shows exactly this point. וזה גופו הוא גם הטעם הפנימי לכך ששם הפרשה לקוח מתחילת הפרשה, כי גם תחילת הפרשה אין סתם השכלה, אלא היא בחינת ראש הכל בשכל as כל המשך הפרשה. And that is also the inner reason why the name of the parsha was taken from the beginning of the parsha, because the beginning of the parsha is not just stam a beginning, but it is like the rosh, which has in it the teichen of the whole parsha. הרב מקשר זויס לתרס אבל שם טוב שכל ענייני העולם הם בהשגחה פרטס ובתחת הדיוק, שמזה נלמד בקל וחומר בענייני התורה שהם בהשגחה פרטס ובתחת הדיוק. And the Rebbe connects this to the Torah Baal Shem Tov, that everything in the world is hashgacha pratis and is very exact. And so we will learn, and so kal v'chaymer to the in Torah, that it's certainly that which is connected to Torah is hashgacha pratis and is exact. Shezeh mevar lanu gam kein hanal. She'av shelachayre chuluk sapar shel Hashem misnes midaitam shel Yisrael atzmam hari lamita shel davar. כל זה היה בהשגחה פרטס, מאיתו יספרך, בהתאם לחכמוסו יספרך, כפי שניתנה בסיני. So even though the names, so that's it seemed like the names of the parashas were just given by Bnei Yisrael itself, but truthfully it is hashgacha pratis from Hashem, and it goes according to the chachma of Hashem as it was given in Sinai. I just feel uncomfortable. Maybe someone else wants to read, or maybe they want to hear someone else. If not, I'll continue.
Rivki Lansky, are you available to read today?
I'm enjoying Rifki, but I could read. Either way. Rifki, I was about to say that I'm enjoying you reading.
Thank you.
Okay, so the Chena Rabbi Makashes is Lateris Abal Shem Tov. Sheshmai shall call davar sheyikru lay b'lashon hakodesh meira alachayis alikis hanimshachas lay midvar Hashem and Mahava Yisai. So the Rabbi connects this to what the Baal Shem Tov taught us, that the name of each thing in Lashon hakodesh shows on the godly energy, life force, which is creating it. Shemizeh muvan sheb'lashon hakodesh b'chlal ein teves hiskamias ala kol shem meira ala teichen shel hadavar. So from here we understand that in the holy language, there's no such thing as just like, okay, everybody agrees on this word, but the name shows on the essence of the thing, on what it is. So from here we understand how much more so that names of Parshas in the Torah, which name of, according to Torah, if something has a name for 30 days, then it's the true name. And it's not just that we just agree to call it that, but it actually shows on the content. Babir Bazet Kanal. Shachin Hanakuda Hamashutefes Lechol Parsha Hi Nakuda Pnimis Sheina Gluya Bashkafa Rishana אלא רק לאחר העיין בביאור חז"ל חולו על הפרשה בפרט ביאורם של פנימיוס התורה. So according to what we explained above, the common point is that every parsha has a central point that is not obvious at first glance, but after looking in depth and the explanations of our chachamim on the parsha, and especially through the explanations of the Pnimius Torah, we're able to see what that is. Val nekuda zu dafka b'shem parsha lahiris b'nimtza kanal shechaluka zu shel Parshas Torah v'shemes elu hem chelek mitalech hagilui shel Pnimius Torah. So this idea, this point, which the Parsha is coming to teach us, which could be found, one second, V'nimtza kanal shechaluka zu shel Parshas Torah. That this way of dividing the Parshas and the names of the Parshas are all part of the revelation of the inner part of Torah. V'zeu gam ken hatam she'inyanim elu lo niskalu miyad misinai ela misham meshach zman la'achar mikein v'yaseder b'skalas pnimius Torah v'der l'dar. And that's why this is also the reason why this was not revealed immediately by Har Sinai, how the parsha should be divided and what they should be called, but only a long time after Matan Torah. Just like we explained, the revelation of the inner aspect of Torah is revealed from generation to generation more and more. And that's why also with the names of the Parshas. Valpi calls that after Lahavin b'miksa satam l'Isak hagadol shel Rebbe v'yanim elo. So according to this, we can understand at least a little bit the reason that the Rebbe was so involved. Paid so much attention to the names of the Parshas. Sharei b'yese hanasi Ditaras Chasidus, and Yanei Ikari hu legales pnimis Torah daika. As the Nasi of Chasidus, his main idea, like his main job, is to reveal the inner part of Torah specifically. V'gam esek b'liman Parshas HaShavua v'chulu hu chelik bilti nifred me'in zeh. So explaining the Parshas HaShavua on a deeper level is inseparable part of his mission of revealing Chassidus. And that's why the Rebbe pays a lot of attention to the names of the Parsha, which show on their inner intention what it's really about. Feel free to chime in, Sara, anytime.
Okay, I was trying to keep the background noise to a minimum here. Exactly right. So because the Rebbe, of course, like we were saying before, every single generation we get more and more Chassidus. That's why we see, and that's what I find also the beauty of that set of Chumashim called Torah, the one that came out of California that Cus publishes, because their introduction to every single Sedra is a combination of the Sichos of the Rebbe that deals specifically with how the name of the Parsha shows us everything in the Parsha. And those introductions always show connection between all the topics that are going to show up in that Sedra. So it's we take it for granted, but this is really something that's new. It's something that the Rebbe gave us, and it was part of this general progression of revelation of Pnimius Torah.
Amazing. Okay. Iyana Geula, should I continue? Okay. Iyana Geula b'Torah Shebal Peh. So the topic of redemption in the oral Torah. Behemshech lemavor b'saich haperek odes Iyana Geula b'Parshas Torah. Muvaz bazeh reshima chalakis k'fi asher hasiga yedenu. Mari mekamis lakama bi'orei Rebbe b'nagel l'sifrei haTorah Shebal Peh. So in continuation of what we explained in this chapter about the idea of Geula in the Parshas of the Torah, here we have a partial list of what we could find, sources for some of the explanations of the Rebbe on the oral Torah to show how all the Nevi'im are really filled with the topic of Geula,
Not Nevi'im,
especially at the
or
end.
Svarim.
Sorry, again?
Svarim. How all the Svarim are full of it. So now we just went through Tanakh, right? We just went through the Parshas, and we saw how the Parshas, and then the Haftarah is full of Malayin B'davar Zeh. Now remember, the Rambam said that all the Nevi'im are full of these things. And as Rebbe showed us, is why the Nevi'im, in other words, the Haftarahs, are very much connected to the Parsha. But now what we're going to see is how the Rebbe shows, and we're going to, the authors here again of the Sefer are taking a number of examples of where the Rebbe shows it's not just in Tanakh, but Kol HaSfarim Malayin B'davar Zeh, everything in Torah is full of Inyan Geula Mashiach, and we're going to see a number of examples of this from other places. Like you're going to see Shas and Sifat HaSiddur and Siddurs and etc. Especially when you look at the end of them, because the end of everything always tells us what the main point of that thing is. Okay, so we start off with Shas. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to think out loud for a second that the Rebbe's Torah ends off very openly about Mashiach, which shows what the point of all of the Rebbe's Torah is. And I'm thinking that once you learn the sichos at the end, and you have the point, then when you look back and learn the previous sichos, so you can see them in the light of Mashiach and Geula, the way that you recognize it more and you realize, oh, okay, like just what we're talking about now, like explaining the names of the Parshas. This is part of us, this is part of Geula. Like you're able to see how it's really all part of the Rebbe's mission. Okay.
Yes.
Shas. See in Perek Rishon, okay, and we see this especially in the end. Again, this is really, really important to start from the end, and then you can go backwards and learn it properly, because you know the point. Okay, so Shas. See in Perek Rishon, the Masachas Brachos, Belahavi Leimesa Mashiach. Okay, what does that mean? What's the Rosh Teves? The something Shabbos Parsha Shmos Tafshin and Beis.
At the Dvar Malchus, the Shabbos.
Dvar Malchus. Nice. You recognize that. So the ends of the first parak of the Gemara Brachos. And how is this bringing to Mashiach? The Rebbe explains in Dvar Malchus in Parsha Shemais Tafshin and Beis. Okay. See Masachas Taines Be'in Hayemtiv Techamisha Asar Ba'av. Hatikon de Tisha B'av v'afichase l'simcha sichas Shabbos Parshas V'eschana Tafshin Mem Ches. So this is where the Rebbe explains how the end of Masachas Tanis is connected to Geula.
Yeah, so really here, they're not explaining it, but they're showing us how if you look at the end of these Masechtas and giving us the sources to go and look it up ourselves, that if you look at these places, you'll see how the Rebbe explains the ends of each of these Masechtas and connects it back to Geula Mashiach.
Okay. Shayches Misaches, Gittin, the Geula, Sida, the Kuti Sichas Chelik, Tes, Sicha, Le Parsha Stetze. Okay, so the connection of the Gemara Gittin to Geula, you can check up the Sicha there. Shayches Misaches, Bava Basra, the Geula, Sida, the Dvar Malchus Shabbos Mishpatim, Tafshin and Beis. Okay, so if you want to know the connection of Bava Basra to Geula, check out the Sicha of Mishpatim, 1992. Siyam Pirkei Avos be'Hashem Yimlech Le'elam Vad. Devar Malchus Shabbos Parshas Tisa Tafshin and Beis. So if you want to see how the end of Pirkei Avos is connected to Hashem's eternal kingship, you can learn the Sikha of Tisa Tafshin and Beis. And also V'rei Gamkein Devar Malchus Shabbos Parshas Balak Tafshin and Aleph. B'nei Gelezeh Shalem Sachas Avos Mishnah Nis Tasef Perek Mea Brisa. Okay, you can also this is hard to translate. You can also learn the
Because
Sicha of
Pirkei
Parshas
Avos, there
Balak.
are two different, because there are two different divisions of Pirkei Avos. So either if the end of it is Yimlach al Shalom Bud and Parshas Tisa, but also if you say Masechta Avos has the extra Mishnah at the end, so there's another parak of Brisa like we have when we
Another
learn
Sicha, which will show how that's about Geula.
That's right, exactly. And so then you get
Siyam Shisha Sidrei Mishnah Be'in Asad HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lahanchil Hadaranim Al Hadranim. How do you say that word? Al Hashas L'kutei Sichos Chelek Chaf Ches Sicha LeParshas Pinchas. Okay, so if you want to see the end of the Mishnayos, then look at the Sicha of Pinchas. Zayar Siyam Rav Parshas Shabbos Sefer Zayar Be'ina Geula Sichas Shabbos Parshas Vayeshev Tavshim Zayin. So if you want to see how the ending of most of the Parshas of the Zayar are connected to Geula, you could look at the Sicha of Parshas Vayeshev, 1987. Rambam Siyam Minyan Reish Mem Ches Mitzvahs Aseh Shabbos Chilas Sefer HaRambam. 1 second. Be'in Nachalais Me'in de la'asid l'kutei sichas chelek chavches sicha hatzana l'parshas Pinchas. So is that about the end of the Rambam? It's how it connects to the future is explained in Parshas Pinchas.
Yes, the last of the mitzvahs, the last of the 248 mitzvahs, I say, are about nachlas
The
and how we
inheritance.
and exactly how that connects to the future. Again, chelek chavches, Parshas Pinchas.
Siyam helchas tainis in hafichas atzemes la'asad the fish zeo shlemas in atainis l'kutei sicha is chelek lamed gimel sicha le'yeshuvas rabatamas. So the end of Masechta, the halachas of the fast days and how they will be transformed into holidays in the future, which is the whole purpose of the fast days, is explained in the Sicha of Shavas Rabatamas in Chelik Lamed Gimel. Siyam helchas beis habchira be'in aseder b'mikdash b'yem haShabbos l'ram b'shas siyam v'ashleim shal beis habchira he b'mikdash de la'asid l'kutei sichas chelek chaf aleph sichas aleph leparshas Vayakel. So if we want to see how the end of the halacha is about the Beis Hamikdash, which ends off with the order of the Mikdash on Shabbos, which shows that the completion of the Beis Hamikdash will be with the future third Beis Hamikdash, is explained in the Sicha on Parshas Vayakel in the 21st volume. Siyam HaRambam Kulei Be'in HaGeula Hashleim L'Kutei Sichas Chelek Yirches Sicha LeParshas Balak. The whole Rambam finishes off with the topic of the complete Geula. The Rebbe talks about this in the Sicha of Parshas Balak, volume 18. Hadranim al Rambam Sifrei Chasidus Siyum L'Kutei Torah V'Yikra Be'in HaGiluyim D'Lasad Lavei Dibra Maska B'Chukaisei Tavshif Chavhei. So the end of L'Kutei Torah, which ends off with Vayikra, about the revelations that will be in the future, which is the Maimer of Bechukaisei. I'm not sure. Okay, the Rebbe explains this in the Maimer of Bechukaisei Tavshin Chavhei. Okay, 1925 or something. L'Kutei Sichas Chelek Yed Zayin Sicha LeParshas Bechukaisei. Siyam L'Kutei Torah. Oh, okay. I think I mixed something up. Okay, basically the last mimer is I don't know what that is. That like an extra source or is that the same thing?
And the fact that it ends off there, so the Rebbe discussed it in a different Bechukaisei Toshel Chafei. So the Rebbe, right, in his mimer there will discuss this ending, but also the Kutei Sichas Chelek Yud Zayin, the Sicha Parshas Bechukaisei, the Rebbe is also going to mention this idea of
Okay,
how
so there's like two sources here. Okay, Siyam L'Kutei Torah Kula Be'iyah Nisui Yitzchak v'Rivka. The whole L'Kutei Torah ends off with the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, which is the Yichud of Man Ban, the masculine and feminine needs of Hashem. L'Achar Yizeh Shir Hashirim Nisui Yisrael v'Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Asad Lavai. And then it continues with the marriage of Hashem with the Jewish people, which will be in the future, Dvar Malchus Shabbos Parshas Chaisar Tavshin Beis, which we discussed here. So we understand how the whole marriage it's about Geula. Siddur HaTefillah, Siyam HaPsukim HaNamarim Kaidem HaKafes B'Pasuk Kimitzian. Why did the Psukim of HaKafes end off with Kimitzian Shekayel Azman Geula, which is referring to the time of Geula? Sichas Simchas Torah Tavshin Beis. So everything ends with Geula. Very nice. Okay. Siyam Seder Karban Pesach Hanemar Be'erev Pesach Bedin She'im HaPesach Nimsa Treifa Lai Allah Lai Ad Shemevi Acher. So the end of the Seder of Karban Pesach, which we read on Erev Pesach, is that if the Pesach is found to be unkosher, then you do not bring it up until you bring another one. Shakarvas Karban Pesach v'dibor bavad hi b'vchinas treifa shalei alalei. So this shows on the Geula, because if a Karban Pesach is only spoken about, then it's like a treifa. It's not, it doesn't go up. So we need Mashiach. Ad shemevi acher, until the end. Karban Pesach kipshute mamish, when we're going to have the actual physical Pesach sacrifice in the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, in the third Beis Hamikdash, Sichas Erev Pesach Tafshin Aleph, Tafshin Nun Aleph, sorry. Tinase. So the Rebbe explains how this is really about Gila. It's ending off with that it's not enough to learn about it or talk about it. The real Seder is only when we have the real Karban Pesach.
Exactly, the real deal.
So,
Well, turns out we don't really have time to go back to chapter 8 today. We just finished the Iyunim here. But as we see, this is really a beautiful way to how the whole Sefer ends off, right? That everything we learn, we've been learning in Yonishal Mashiach, because the Rebbe told us this is the quickest way to bring Mashiach. But what a great way to end it. Hashgacha Pratis here, when we say, okay, but reading about and learning about it is not enough. We need, actually, the whole point is to bring Mashiach down, that we actually have Mashiach here with us, and that we can fulfill all the mitzvahs and not leave it in a theoretical, thing. So in the schus of all of our learning, and in the schus of the accomplishment of this learning, and how it affects, like you said, Rifki, at the very beginning, how when you learn this and then you learn other things with other people, other sichas, and actually it all comes back together, because ultimately that is the main nakuda of everything. And so once we understand it and we personalize it and we can live with it and we can internalize it, it's so much easier then to be able to talk about whatever it is. It comes up everywhere. I find that in many different discussions about many, many different kinds of things, these inyanim come back in all different ways, whether it's people asking about a question about something in the Parsha, or whether people are asking something about Mashiach themselves that they don't understand, or something that they're afraid of about Mashiach, or whatever it is. When we learn it and we internalize it, it doesn't only help us strengthen ourselves, but it actually ends up changing our mindset in ways that then affect everybody around us in many different areas, not just in specific shiurim of Gula Mashiach that we have with other people. So may the fact that we're doing this, the Rebbe told us to learn Gula Mashiach and told us the quickest way to make it happen. May we see that immediately.
yeah, and Sarah, I'm thinking that this should be, even though, Chas v'shalom, if we're still in Gauss, we'll definitely continue, but let this be considered a siyum and say, it's enough, Rebbe, just let this be enough learning, and let this be the end of Galus. And like I'm just thinking, this really reminds me a lot about the importance of Dvar Malchus, learning the sichas from Nun Aleph Nun Beis, which gives us that perspective because it's the end of the Rebbe's teachings. I'm thinking also the Rebbe himself. If we have all the leaders from Avram Avinu until our Rebbe, where do we see Mashiach the most? Obviously, in the leader that's the closest to Gila, who's actually going to take us out of Galus. So it makes a lot of sense that we, see the Rebbe focusing so much on Mashiach, just like at the end of everything is Mashiach. So let's let it be the end now. Chaim, thank you so much.
Fine.
I heard today in Chitas for Kids that today is the yard site of Reb Tzimcha Mushka, the wife of the Tzemach Tzedek. So another
Wow.
today, Tzemach Tzedek is Mashiach, right? Tzemach Tzedek.
Yeah. Wow. So it's a good day. Very good day. We agree. We're in.
All right. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you very much.
See you, Yerushalayim.
Amen.
Take it to me, Ad.
Amen.